Okay. All right. We're going to go ahead and call the meeting of the Bloomington City Council to order. And if I could get everyone to say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now 4 minutes of silence. Okay, thank you. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Matthew.
Here.
Councilmember Bolin.
Here.
Councilmember Milawambre.
Here.
Councilmember Ime.
Here.
Councilmember Painter.
Here.
Councilmember Carrillo.
Here.
Councilmember Ward.
Here.
Councilmember Crable. Councilmember Bray.
Here.
Mayor Renner.
Here. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. I had a little bit of difficulty getting back on today. Thank you so much. In the process of trying to find my agenda. Sorry. Okay, Madam Clerk, since I apologize, since I'm getting in a minute or so late, do we still need to do the Pledge of Allegiance and everything?
No, Mayor, we've gotten that far through roll call, and so now it's just the COVID-19 update by the city manager, and I'll re-email you the agenda now.
Okay, thank you. I'm sure I've got it, but thank you very much. Tim, you want to give us an update, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. And for the community, wanted to provide an update on the vaccination center, our arena, in conjunction with the McLean County Health Department. Camille Rodriguez, County Administrator, continues to just make sure that this community and especially the elected officials know how much she appreciates the partnership. And we also think that there's opportunities for us to ramp up what we're delivering in terms of the resources, the people, but still the vaccination supply is a concern for us here at McLean County. But I do know that our local state delegation is involved in this. I had a conversation with Representative Dan Brady past week, actually a meeting, and he really is at the forefront with the governor's office trying to get us more supply here at the community. And I know Chairman McIntyre is as well. So shift gears. One thing that I wanted to share is as we approach, possibly a spring lifting of eviction, the suspension of eviction. I wanted to share that Prairie State Legal Services is the lead for a new initiative called the Eviction Diversion Program. Through this program, the Prairie State Legal Services is working with county and service providers to meet those facing eviction at the time of their court hearing. And then one thing that the city is doing, and we're stepping into this, at least initially, we'll have someone on site to assist Bloomington residents interested in rental assistance with the application. We're hoping the county will send out a list of items to bring to the court hearing ahead of time so that we can complete the entire application process on site. Staff will be attending a trial run later this week. The goal is to work out the kinks so that when the eviction moratorium ends, it will be a smooth process. Another item, Mayor, wanted to share some of the homelessness numbers. And while we do not have any 2021 numbers provided to us from PATH for January and February, we do have some 2020 point in time count is what they call it. And those numbers are of 171 households reported again in 2020, 216 people were experiencing homelessness in not just the city of Bloomington, but also the numbers include the town of Normal. About 52% of people experiencing homelessness in our 11-county continuum of care are in McLean County. And I want to say that again because I think I sort of butchered that comment. Of about 52% of all people experiencing homelessness in our 11-county continuum of care are in McLean County. 2021 point in time, again, this data is not prepared yet. One thing for those that are suffering from homelessness, there is the eviction moratorium that is providing protections. But again, we want to be prepared in the front end for the day that those are lifted. And I think the anticipation is sometime this spring. So that's something that our staff is working with Prairie State Legal Services and also McLean County to make sure that our residents are in a better spot when that day comes. Another thing I wanted to share that while we have emergency shelters in place in our community, anything beyond this capacity, there are hotel vouchers that McLean County will issue. And some of our CDBG funding has gone to fund McLean County and some of those vouchers. So just a quick overview, Mayor, but wanted to provide that to the community and to the elected officials. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Belize, and we appreciate all of what you do and obviously all of what you and your staff do. It's obviously an incredibly difficult, intense time as we're moving forward and trying to get this budget passed. Thank you. At this point, we're going to go to our under 6, our recognition of appointments to boards and commissions. Madam Clerk.
We're recognizing Ashley Farmer with the Public Safety and Community Relations Board and Brady Sant Amor with the Planning Commission. Congratulations.
Great. Thank you, Madam Clerk. And thank you for everybody who's willing to step forward. Obviously, we very much appreciate it. It's really, really critical when we have people who are willing to deep dive into many of the issues that we have to deal with. And we have board and commission members who really give us some information and help illuminate the possibilities and problems and issues and concerns that we have to deal with. At this point, we'll move to public comment. Madam Clerk, do we have people online or anyone to announce?
We do. We have 2 people that are present here at the Fishbowl at City Hall. That is Andrew Hollins and Janice Holland. We want to start with Andrew, and then those are also the same 2 people who emailed comment that was provided to council before the meeting. So.
Thank you.
Hello,
Janice or Andrew? Oh, sorry.
I'm Andrew.
You can take your mask off. I think you're far enough.
Can I take this off?
Yes, please. That's fine.
Yeah, I'm
Thank
Andrew,
you, sir.
and I'm a local landlord here. And I'm just real upset about the city's, I know they said it's a city ordinance with this water bill thing, which is totally ridiculous at this point. And the gentleman was speaking about the moratorium and the evictions, but me as landlords cannot evict nobody. But yet, the water can't be shut off, but at the end of the day, I'm responsible for this tenant's water bill. And there's nothing out there for the landlords. There's all kinds of stuff out there for the tenants doing this COVID thing. But then they all say because of COVID, they can't do this, they can't do that. But at the same time, the water bill keeps going up and they don't shut the water bill off because of the COVID. Okay, and then our tenants know this. So that's giving them a green light to not pay their water bill, just like not paying their rent. But there's all kinds of programs out there for them to get assistance to pay the rent, but they don't do that. But at the end of the day, we got to pay that. At the same time, we got to fix furnaces. We got to fix hot water heaters. We got to pay taxes. We got to do 101 other things that the tenants not even aware of that we do. And, over the winter, we fixed 5 furnaces. And if we hadn't fixed those furnaces, they would have been calling down to the city and the inspectors would have been over there and we would have been in trouble for not fixing the furnace. But at the same time, we don't get rent. So we're supposed to keep paying out this stuff, and there's nothing out there for the landlords to get assistance with. I mean, it's just, and the city want to keep charging us, nobody paid late fees, but then the city want to tack on late fees on top of this charges with somebody else's water bill. I just think it's absurd, and we need some answers, and we need some stuff changed. Because everybody's using this pandemic as an excuse not to do this and not to do that. But at the same time, the city and the water department keep on like it was before the pandemic. So if everybody, the whole world is in a pandemic, including the landlords, and we trying to make it places for tenants to live, and we rent to less fortunate people. And then the guy was saying something about after this moratorium is not going to last forever, just like the pandemic ain't. And once it's lifted, it is going to be a flux of homeless people. And the only reason is because of, we got to pay out.
I'm sorry, sir. Your time is up. I apologize. Thank you. I just want to clarify that as a comment. Again, we don't normally comment back, but that you might want to get in touch with Melissa Hahn and others, because we do have programs that might be able to help small businesses. You might want to check into that, sir. You're absolutely right, and I wish you the best.
You said get in touch with who?
Melissa Hahn. And if you have issues, just call me, and we'll get you in touch with her. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
And next up, we have Janice Holland.
Janice.
So I'll just pick up where he left off. And I thought it's interesting that you guys open up your meeting with talk about your homeless numbers and the moratorium protection. The moratorium protection for tenants who are not paying their rent. And I've been having conversations throughout most of the day with the finance department, because what happened to us and what's happening to other landlords is the water department, or more recently known as the finance department, has refused to shut off the tenant's water. And we have a tenant now who, for 12 months, since the day that the protection came on, that they weren't going to charge late fees and we're not shutting off water, we have a tenant who hasn't made a payment since. We've been calling down to the water department, hey, when are you guys going to start shutting water off? What are we going to do? What can we do? This and that. Nobody said anything. You know what they say? They're like a broken record down there. It's an ordinance. I'm sorry, there's nothing we can do. Well, you know what? Last month I found out what you are going to do. And you sent me a letter with big red letters in the bottom that said this is an attempt to collect a debt. And it was a letter saying that we would request your help in bringing this account current by February 26th in order to prevent a possible legal action of a lien being placed on my property. Okay, first of all, that letter was dated February 12th. I did not receive it till the 19th. And you want to give me 15 days to bring a delinquent tenant's water bill current after he's been let to run up his water bill for 12 consecutive months. His bill on December 12th was $1,873. And the city finance department wants to send the landlord a letter because we're jointly and severally liable. Okay, this is the code. This is the ordinance that has been being referred to. And so you're going to tell me that a year of these COVID courtesies to these tenants who have resources available to them, they're not even going to ask for the help because there's no incentive, because they know if they don't pay that water bill, the landlord will. And in my last 20 seconds, I'm here to let you know, we're not going to keep taking this. And we're going to do what we need to do to take the proper steps to get that changed. For number one, if you want us to be jointly and severally liable with these tenants, then you ought to respect the services that we provide to this community during a moratorium, keeping homeless numbers down. And we deserve more respect.
Thank you. Thank you very much, ma'am. I appreciate it. Again, we're very sorry about these issues. These are very, very difficult times that all of us are facing, and we will be back in touch with you. Again, we very much appreciate your understanding. Excuse me. At this point, we're going to move. Madam Clerk, are there people that you want to announce?
Nope, we've already announced them. Andrew and Janice Holland for the other emailed public comment.
Thank you very much, and thank you so much for understanding. We do understand the difficulties, and we will do whatever we can to try to move forward with this. Next on our consent agenda, there under item 8, are there any items that any member of the City Council would like to have removed for separate consideration? Do I see any hands? Is there someone who would like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda then as presented?
I'll make that motion.
Moved by Councilmember Boland. Is there a second? Councilmember Bray. Thank you very much. Any discussion? Seeing that, Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Maffey,
Yes.
Councilmember Boland,
Yes.
Councilmember Milawambwe,
Yes.
Councilmember Emig,
Yes.
Councilmember Painter,
Yes.
Councilmember Carrillo,
Yes.
Councilmember Ward,
Aye.
Councilmember Bray.
Yes.
Great. Thank you so much, Madam Clerk. We move on to our regular agenda under number 9, presentation of the utility billing conversion and residents engagement interface platform. The invoice cloud is, is requested by the Finance Department. And at this point, there is no motion required, but we have a presentation and very brief council discussion of 5 minutes. I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Gleason and then Mr. Rathman as he so chooses. Mr. Gleason.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This utility billing conversion is quite a big deal for the organization. I wanted to have Scott Rathman prepare a presentation. Billy, our Deputy City Manager, is working on a communication rollout for the residents of the community. And there's a fair amount that's in play, and this is actually coming up very soon. Scott?
Thank you, City Manager. Yes, we're fairly excited about beginning the countdown to our utility billing conversion that's been in the process for nearly 3 years now. It's not just a system conversion, but it's really kind of a changing the solution related to utility billing, and then a further extension of that throughout the organization related to this invoice cloud payment platform. So I'm going to share my screen here. Oh, hang on.
Are we okay? Is everything okay?
Phil was attempting to show me how to do the screen. Can you see the screen now?
Yeah, we good.
All right, cool. Teach a man to fish. I made that joke with him as opposed to handing. Okay, but before we go through some of the details, I wanted to provide a little history on the system. We use Tyler Muniz as our enterprise resource planning system. We've had that since 2011. Utility billing was to be one of the final conversions. It's a very complex system. We have over 30,000 accounts, but as I mentioned initially, we didn't want to just look at this as a billing system conversion, but attempting to provide more of a global solution to the community, enhance payment options, better communications, things of that nature, along with the staff efficiencies that we're going to gain. As I also indicated, we had 30,000 plus utility accounts, and we're rolling out this invoice cloud platform. a very major undertaking with 3 departments involved, probably more: IT, finance, public works. It's something that's going to impact the community related to benefits on the other side. But in the short term, we are going to have a bit of a downtime related to this conversion of all this data. Before we talk about the downtime and that conversion, I wanted to just briefly go through the benefits that we went through in November related to Invoice Cloud. There's many more options for payment. I'll just highlight a couple here. The mobile text payment. And we're going to have an IVR solution for residents to be able to call in and make a payment anytime, day or night, with also an option for our Spanish-speaking residents. The other component I wanted to emphasize related to the new system is that it is really user-friendly. There may be concerns related to learning the new system, getting adjusted to it. But as you can see here in this screen, once you're in this system, it fairly just prompts you through. Send me a pay by text message. Like to sign up for auto pay. Would like to sign up for paperless. Of course, our staff at the city here will be available to help guide people through the system. But essentially, once we go live, there will be a link on our website, just as there is now, online payment portal that'll basically provide you two options: a one-time payment or a login kind of option. But this one will be fairly easy and walk you right through it. Okay, I am currently seeing 2 separate screens on my my screen. Are we seeing a what residents need to know screen or a paying a bill and receipt screen? And
Paying a bill and receipt.
Okay, my apologies. Okay, I think Phil's intervening on my behalf at this point. So what residents need to know, and my apologies, we'll get this figured out before budget presentation. We're going to have, the system is going to be down starting March 12th. All of the account numbers and bill formats will change, and auto payment and e-delivery options will need to be reset as well. We'll go through these in detail in just a moment. Next screen, Phil, if you're doing this for me. System downtime. So we're going to need to take the system down March 12th at 4:30, and it's going to be down for an entire week. This means we won't be able to process bills or payments during this time. However, if you mail in your bill or if you drop off payments, we'll still be able to accept those, and we'll post them to your account after the conversion. Given this sort of temporary pause in the processing and considering that there will be a learning curve for the community, we're not going to assess any late penalties from March 12th through April 30th to account for this transition. Next slide, please. Okay, key information. Everyone's account number will change, and this is key to setting up transactions online. The new bills will be sent out at the beginning of March 29th. If you're scheduled to have a bill being processed the week of March 15th during our downtime, we're actually going to accelerate that processing and get your bill out to you early this week. The due date will still be the same, but we're going to try to get ahead so we won't have kind of a backlog of payment or of billing post conversions. Within those new bills, we're going to have a how to read your bill insert. The bills will look completely different. The account will be in a different place, et cetera. So we're going to help walk the community through that process. If you do mail-in payments, nothing's going to change. So you can continue to mail in your payment with your old bill, and then when you get your new bill, you'll just process your payment as you always have. Nothing will change other than your account number. Next slide, please. The key component for the conversion, post-conversion, will be those consumers and residents that have signed up for auto payment and e-delivery. We're going to have to ask everyone to reset their credit card and direct debit processing instructions. And the need for this is really related to PCI compliance, payment card industry compliance. Basically, we've been given authorization to process payments via a certain credit card processor or direct debit as we process them. But in the future, everything's going to be processing through Invoice Cloud and their processor. So we need everyone to reauthorize and reset those accounts. For those residents set up on auto pay, you're going to have to do a one-time payment and then set your account up for recurring after that. Instructions are going to be available online, but what we need to emphasize is you cannot do that until after we go live on March 23rd. You're going to need your new account number, and we won't have those until we actually go live. So at the bottom there, we have the bold instructions. In order to do anything online, you must have your new account number, and you can wait to get your first bill for that, or you can call into the city and we'll provide that to you. And then the other option related to online activity as it stands now is for those consumers or residents that are signed up for paperless. We want to encourage our residents to sign up for paperless. It's good for the environment, it's cost savings, but we are asking the residents to re-enroll post-conversion. We'll have instructions on how to do this after or online after the conversion. We have about 20% of our emails that get kicked back. So we're looking at the need for fresh data related to this. Next slide, please. So I want to apologize for the inconvenience of both the conversion and this presentation. Phil did his best to teach an old dog a new trick here, and I apologize for that. I want to communicate to the residents. It's going to be well worth this transition period. A more robust solution, easier to utilize from home. If you mail in your payments, nothing's going to change. Again, we want to assure everyone there's not going to be any penalties assessed during this transition period. And we're here to help anyone with questions. The 303-434-2426 number. We have a well-trained staff that can walk everyone through this process. We're going to make all this information available during the down week on our website. There's information out there now as to the same topic that we just went through. A press release is coming out. We'll be sending out another email blast to everyone and try to keep everyone really informed as we go through this process and be available for any phone calls. So I'll pause now to see if there's any questions related to our transition to this new utility billing solution.
Hey, Scott.
Yes, sir.
I do want to reiterate that online billing is not available 4:30 on Friday until the 22nd, and there's no late fees.
That is correct. We do not want anyone to try to do this process early. You need your new account number before you can do any kind of payments via the online portal. So we're going to go down Friday afternoon at 4:30. The old portal will be disconnected at that time. And then on the 23rd, we'll be live with the new one. Any other questions?
Mayor, it does look like Councilmember Boland has her hand up.
Yeah, I just have a simple question. Do you know how much savings overall this will provide the city?
That is a great question and a difficult one to answer right now. Initially, as presented when we introduced the Invoice Cloud solution, we're going to have an initial increase in expense related to the online transaction costs from that solution. But the offset is really going to be felt over the shorter term related to driving people to sign up for paperless. The longer term will be more efficient operations from staff and that kind of thing. So I don't have a concrete number related to savings.
Okay, that answers my question. Thank you.
Okay.
Mayor, you're on mute.
I didn't know I muted myself. Sorry. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Again, thank you, Mr. Rathman. Thank you,
Thank you.
all of the staff and Mr. Gleason for all the work on this. We're going to move next to item B, presentation and discussion of FY 22 and 23's resurfacing projects. Mr. Gleason.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is an exciting presentation with an action item that comes right next as item 9C. And if you will recall that, and it's based on this council's vision to increase the emphasis on asphalt, concrete, streets, and sidewalk projects for the city. And we've done that. One thing that we found this year is we saw a reduction in locomotive fuel tax revenues, which is the primary source of funding. But it's one where this council, and it's not adopted yet in the budget, but it's one that this council wanted to maintain that level that we've promised a couple of years ago to the community of about $7 million in total projects in any given construction season. This is one where we try to message as often as we possibly can. The website that we created a couple of years ago is updated. Last year when we presented year one of this 3-year road plan, we're now in year 2. And Kevin Cothey, the Public Works Director, and his team have done an excellent job with scoring. Kevin's about to share that and talking about improving some of the efficiencies in our relationship with the contractor to get more bang for the taxpayer dollar. So with nothing else from me to say, Kevin, I'm going to turn it over to you for the presentation.
Thank you, City Manager Gleason, Mayor and Council. I'm going to share my screen here with you and walk through a small presentation about our proposed resurfacing for FY 22 and FY 23. As we get started with this, I just want to make it clear that this is for proposed work for this coming summer. This does not include work that's already under contract. So as many of you know, the FY 21 resurfacing contract is not finished yet. We still have some work to do on Hershey Road and also on Woodbridge Boulevard. Those streets have not been finished yet, but once the spring weather sticks around a little bit longer, it's a beautiful day today, but it's not time yet for the asphalt plants to get into production. But once they do, we will be expecting road to finish up the work from last year's contract. So this resurfacing this year is just focused on what we'll be putting under contract for this summer. So the breakout for the program, as Mr. Gleason said, really we're still at $7.2 million overall project. And the way that splits out here is basically $5 million for resurfacing. And then we also have money allocated for pavement preservation and for our emergency multi-street alley and sidewalk repair contract. So total dollars for pavements is $6 million. And then about 1.2 million also for the sidewalks and ramp work. And so that's what you see on the other parts of the pie chart, everything from the sidewalk and ramp work, which will be a separate contract, to also the sidewalk vertical displacement, which is a very effective way of correcting vertical displacement issues for a much more effective, as many as 3 to 5 times more effective than the cost to replace the concrete sidewalk. So we try to utilize the available funds the best we can to make the dollars go as far as possible. And as noted, it's really the same type of dollars as last year, but that was even though the locomotive fuel tax is off about 25% from what we were hoping for. So with the streets that we're proposing for FY 22 and FY 23, the map was in your council packet. And this is a slight adjustment from some of the streets that we're seeing for the FY 2021, FY 22 map. And some of those streets were adjusted by moving them out instead of 22 to 23. In one case, push back a little bit further because as we were looking for efficiencies, meaning the contractor is much more cost effective when they can do a longer section of street or several streets that are adjacent to each other. We realize that coming up in the FY24, like for instance on Washington, there's some longer stretches of Washington that are going to be coming up in the future years. So we moved that section of Washington near Veterans out a little bit further to match up with those other Washington Street projects, so we can just get that all done at one time. Many of you know that the IDOT resurfacing of Veterans Parkway from basically Washington South to Commerce, that contract was finally awarded, and Rowe intends to get started on that project this spring. And we expect that to be going on this summer, the resurfacing of Veterans from Washington Commerce. We're also looking at our local streets, the Washingtons, the Oaklands, the Lincolns, and trying to get those intersecting streets also resurfaced. We had originally planned on, like I say, those for FY22. We moved them to FY23 for a couple of reasons, and that's what's shown on your map here. We also added some other streets that weren't shown initially on the FY22 map to make longer stretches. For instance, Springfield Road, we tied in a section of Low Street to make that a longer stretch and be more efficient with our money. So the adjustments made, in general, the map is similar to what you saw last year, but the adjustments made were to increase efficiencies and get the most bang for our buck. And so that's an overview of that map. The process that we go through for the street selection, this is very similar to what you saw last year, is that we rate our pavements on a Pazer scale that's 1 through 10, 10 being the highest brand new street. And we've been doing that consistently for a number of years. We then use that input as into our optimization software. Decision optimization technology is the software we used for the first time last year and again this year. And that combines the ratings with other factors such as the functional class and the service type, the surface type, ADT, and analyzes it systematically across the whole city. And then we also enter in budget constraints, as we know we have a budget to work within. And then we also plug in some other considerations for infrastructure improvements. We obviously don't want to resurface a street that needs a new water main or a sewer repair. And so we look for those opportunities to make sure that we do the resurfacing after the infrastructure is improved. An example of that from last year was Sunset Road. We delayed the resurfacing until we got the water main finished on Sunset Road. Now the neighborhood has a new water main and a newly resurfaced road, and it looks really good. And so we, look for those opportunities to make sure that we don't get the cart in front of the horse, so to speak, by resurfacing a street that has some needed utility repairs before we get to it. So those are some of the reasons that we might move the streets around a little bit, is to make sure that we have everything in the proper order. Tonight, as part of the presentation, there'll be also an action item just after this, and we're going to ask that you consider waiving bids again this year. We did this last year, and our normal bidding process does take a little bit longer than if we just negotiate. And as noted in the council memo, Rowe, which is a division of UCM, United Contractors Midwest, they've been the sole bidder basically from 2012 to 2019. And then we've also negotiated with them in 2009, 2011, and in 2020. We're asking for your permission to do that again. We feel that not only does the process go quicker to get this awarded, but it also gives us that opportunity to talk with the contractor and discover ways to improve the delivery of the work, as well as do it more cost effectively. A straight out bid process is very rigid, and while they can ask questions, the bidders can ask questions, there's limited amount of dialogue back and forth through formal addendums and so forth. And so we feel like the bid waiver allows us some more opportunities to seek getting the best product for the best cost. And so that's why we do that. As Mr. Gleason pointed out, we do have our Bloomington Streets webpage. It currently has information about last year's program on it because we still haven't finished that one yet. But once we move along with getting the list of streets approved here tonight, we will work on updating that with current information for the upcoming season as well. And during the construction process, we try to keep the information current as to what streets have been started, what streets have been finished, and it can be a great resource for our citizens to see where things are at. So at this point, I'll open it up for comments or questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Councilmember Painter, I see your hand up. Johnny?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you so much, Kevin, for this great presentation. I just was wondering, what kind of money do you have set aside for emergencies, like in case the street caves in somewhere, or all the potholes we have, or raising the manholes up that have sunk?
Yeah, that's a great question. We use several different resources. So depending on what the issue is, of course, potholes and permanent pothole patching, our public service streets and sewers division, they're out there, working to fill the potholes as soon as they get reported to us, as well as in the summer doing permanent pothole patching. And they also do concrete panel replacements. We also have some utility maintenance contracts, one of them being the street, alley, and sidewalk repair contract, which is $200,000. That gives us ability to go fix things that we didn't anticipate, or more for smaller type repairs. But then we also have, if it is a issue with a manhole or a sewer, we have a utility maintenance contract that is related to those utilities. So those repairs, if it involves a sewer or manhole, would be done out of that contract. And we have a regular utility maintenance contract and emergency utility maintenance contract that are bid every year, and you'll be seeing those come before you here in the next month or so.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Councilor Emig and then Bowman.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for the presentation, Mr. Kothe. So I have two questions, and the first is just related to how you make a determination about which parts of town get priority. And I just would appreciate hearing from you, if there's an area of my neighborhood, and I'm thinking of one that I've already written to you about today, is there a way for representatives and our constituents to get feedback, for example, on where they might fall, especially if they're disappointed that they're not seeing evidence that their streets are going to be revisited and resurfaced anytime soon? So that's my first question. And my second question is in reference to the Brick Streets Master Plan that was passed in 2017. And I would just like a commitment that we can revisit this plan, perhaps in conjunction with the Historic Preservation Commission, given where we are now and the reality, and just make a determination going forward about how that's going to work. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Emig. As you know, the software that we use, the decision optimization technology software, is not looking at wards. It's looking across the entire city, all our streets, all our infrastructure, and making recommendations based not by area, but based on the streets and the volumes and whether it's a collector or arterial, local road, and so forth. So it's kind of trying to balance the benefits across all those different types of facilities. And so it really is not looking at one particular ward. If one area of the city feels like it gets more preference in one year versus another, that's more of a randomization as opposed to anything deliberate on our parts to select certain streets. Now we do try within neighborhoods to do multiple streets while we're there, just because of the mobilization costs. Our contractor is moving big equipment around to do the work, and that mobilization is a cost factor to them. So we can get more done if we're, allow them to have their equipment on the ground for multiple blocks in the neighborhood. So we do try to group where we can to get those efficiencies. As far as, years out, we re-rate the streets. We try to look at every street at least once every 3 years. Some we look at maybe a little bit more often than others. If it's a brand new street or newly resurfaced, we don't need to look at it right away. But we try to get that eyes on the ground reassessment on a regular basis and update that in the software, because we know that, the winters in central Illinois can be harsh, and they don't do any favors to our streets. And, for whatever reason, streets don't always perform exactly the same way. And so where one street might look like it's really ragged and in bad shape, it might actually last much longer than another street that had looked a little bit better a few years before. So we don't want to project out way too far in the future where we commit to a street that, is actually holding together where another one fell apart. So we try to reevaluate, with the software where those priorities need to be. So it's difficult to project way out and know where we land, say, 4 years from now. The software will do it, but then the ratings might change between now and then. So we do reevaluate.
I understand.
To your second point on the Brick Street Master Plan, that is something that we should be revisiting. Obviously, brick streets were identified as something that Bloomington has a few left, and so where that falls in terms of funding and priorities and how we can do that needs to be discussed with the larger group. So I don't have an easy answer for you there right now.
Thank you very much. Is that Councilmember Painter? You're good. Okay. Thank you. At this point, we're almost out of time, but we're going to see if we can go do this quickly. We'll move expeditiously through this. Councilmember Boland, Ward, and Millawamway. Donna?
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. This is really great. I'm always glad to see infrastructure taken care of. Could you talk a little bit about the preservation? Have you changed the methodology or the company that is processing that right now?
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember Boland. I didn't speak too much about the payment preservation night. That is certainly a component, just like it was last year, and it is allocated there. We have not put that information together as far as what streets or how we'll divvy that up. But at this point, we're planning to use some of the same products. The Reclamite really has not been controversial. The only one that has maybe been the controversial is the C85, and we'll be putting together the streets for that program. We're also our city engineer Craig Schonkweiler is new to the city. He's been in Central Illinois. He was city engineer for Urbana for a number of years, and then in Bloomington, Indiana, and we're very fortunate to have him on staff, and he has some good ideas that he would like to try here for pavement preservation as well. So I think there's some different opportunities as we move forward, not only with using the vendors we've been using, but also to even look at some other things. And at this point, we have money allocated for that, in the budget, but we haven't worked out the details on it yet.
Okay, thank you.
Just to, if I could clarify that before we move on, you mentioned, Kevin, Reclamite isn't controversial for who? I tend to get, every time we do anything, I tend to get at least some pushback. I don't mean that it's inappropriate or it's the wrong way to do it, but what do you mean by it's not controversial?
Well, what I mean, Mayor, is that the Reclamite is what we do on the brand new streets. It's a lighter oil that goes down. We don't really get complaints about it. We have had complaints about the C85 before, because that is the product that we use the lime screenings on, and it tends to create dust and that type of thing. So there have been more concerns expressed by citizens about the C85. The Reclamite, really, we don't get complaints on.
Cool. Thank you so much. Councilmember Ward and then Millawamway.
Yeah, so Mr. Cothey, I really appreciate the presentation, and particularly as a newer member of the council, it's really helpful to understand the process that you're going through. I guess I would put in a word for not completely throwing out the human factor in terms of decision making about which streets to focus on when. I appreciate very much the desire to be as objective as possible, and using the software and so forth. But I guess the thing that sort of catches my attention is that the reality is I avoid certain streets because they're so difficult to drive on, frankly, and I could imagine that could affect traffic patterns and people not going down certain streets because they're not well maintained. And so I would hate for it to be a self-fulfilling prophecy that a particular street doesn't get any traffic because it's not well maintained, and therefore it's not well maintained because it doesn't get any traffic. And particularly in older neighborhoods, that's an issue for us. So please don't throw out the human factor. And I hope moving forward we can have public input taken into account as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Ward. I totally agree. And I just want to reemphasize the human factor in addition to everything else. Councilmember Ward did an incredibly effective job at clarifying that. I almost every day, maybe not every day, but almost every day in one of my latest midlife crisis cars, I hit a pothole or several, and I think, damn that mayor, get the streets fixed. So at this point, we're going to move to Councilmember Milawambwe and then Councilmember Carrillo.
Sure. Thank you. Just a couple of things. One, thank you, Kevin, for a very insightful and informative presentation. I wanted to also, I guess, piggyback on what Councilmember Ward said about the human factor. I think it's very important. Although we try to be as objective as we want to be, but you also have to remember that for some people who drive on the same street, come out of their neighborhood on the same street, if that street is not fixed after 5-6 years or something like that, I think it definitely impacts the way they view the kind of job that we're doing. So I would say there should be some consideration to that, so that we can figure out what's the best way to address their concerns, because it can leave, I would say, a bitter taste in people's mouth. Other thing that I wanted to ask Kevin is that how much do you think we're saving by this process of being more efficient with the mobilization of contractors and grouping streets together?
That's a hard number to determine exactly, but I can tell you that we have run up against it in the past. And when we talk with Roe about where we can save money, that is one of the things that they've identified time again, that if we group the streets together, we get better pricing. And if we make them run all over town, that is not cost effective for them, and they up the price. So that we've heard that directly from the contractor. And we have, it's been a number of years ago, but even when Tom Hamilton was still here as the city manager, there was a time where we had to go back with Roe, even after the contract was awarded, to try to get some of those efficiencies back, because we had really high prices. So I remember that from a number of years ago.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. And then the last thing that I would say is I'm not sure. I try to look at the website to see how things are structured a little bit, so bloomingtonstreets.com, but I think it would be good for us to kind of keep a running tab of all the streets, that we're doing, not just from one season to the next, but several seasons all together, so people could actually see the volume of work that's been completed. And I'm not sure, it may be there, but just at a quick glance, I couldn't tell. But I do think if you put 5 or 6 years together, I think it really shows a much bigger picture of what we're doing.
So Mboka, if I could understand what you're saying, you would like us to make sure that online we indicate what streets in the city have been paved in the last 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years? Is that what you're asking for?
Right, exactly. Not just one season. Because I can't tell from the website that it's more than just last year or something like that.
And then if I could, so that would just indicate what has already been done. Is that what you're asking for? I'm not
Right,
really
what's
understanding.
already been, what's been done. So I think it would be a nice visual for people to see. And even if it were just a map, just to show, just like we have a map for FY22 and 23, but if we showed on a map that we've done, from FY9, I don't know, 15 to FY22, I think that visual shows how much is getting done.
Okay, so I'm sorry, just to clarify, the goal would be just to say what we have done as opposed to what we need to do?
Right, what we have done, what's been accomplished.
Okay, all right, thank you. Councilmember Carrillo.
Hi, yeah, thank you so much for the great presentation, Kevin. Yeah, I think that the elephant to name in the room, I guess, is just that road work is like a super political topic. Like I don't think that any of us don't get phone calls about, I want this road done and I want this road done. Like, I mean, it's the thing that I think is the unifier throughout the whole city, that people want to see their streets resurfaced. I think that the past human involvement had not been totally reliable. I think that there was a lot of distrust around how those decisions were being made about sort of who got prioritized and who got first dibs in terms of this work. And so I think that probably fed into this sense that like the more that we can automate it and the more that we can have just like data that comes out that tells us, and the more that we remove like what could possibly be human bias, the better that our system will end up being. But I totally agree with Councilmember Ward that like the pendulum sort of swung too much the other way. And so, I mean, I guess rather than just saying, how do we insert some human element, because I would hate for that to go back to being decisions that are made without public input. I'd like to see us think about how that human element can be reinserted into this process, but in a way that's really open and transparent and out in the public. So yeah, I guess that's my 2 cents, but thank you so much for your work. And this has been super helpful.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Anything else that I can see? Thank you. We're gonna go at this point. Oh, sorry. We need a, okay, Midwest Contractors. I'm sorry. We don't need a motion. Oh, I'm sorry. We do need a motion. Do we have a motion to approve?
Mayor?
Yes.
Right now, that was the presentation 9C.
So we don't need any motion at all.
Not yet.
But we're still on 9C, so we do need a motion to.
We're on 9B. We're on 9B.
Oh, I thought you said 9C.
Yeah, 9C will have the motion. Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I gotcha. Anything else? Okay, we'll go ahead to 9C, and I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Gleason, and then Mr. Cothey again. Tim.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have anything additional. I think Kevin queued this up, but we'll hand it over to him.
Kevin, you hear us?
Yes, I do. And thank you, Mr. Gleason. Yeah, the presentation really covered everything, and I appreciate the comments, that feedback from the council, and we'll take that under advisement and see what we can do to incorporate some of that in the website, and also look to how we can be better with the people factor and transparency for next year. But at this point, we'll turn it back to you, Mayor, so that you can move forward with the resolution and the motion.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Kevin. I appreciate that. At this point, let me pull the map over here. Do we have a motion to move this forward?
Motion to approve as presented, Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. Motion to approve as presented by Councilmember Matthew, second by Councilmember Emick. Further discussion, comments, questions? I'm looking, Madam Clerk, do you see anybody?
Nope, I think we're ready to go.
Okay, go ahead and call the roll call. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Matthew,
Yes.
Councilmember Bolin,
Yes.
Councilmember Millawamboy,
Yes.
Councilmember Emig,
Yes.
Councilmember Painter,
Yes.
Councilmember Carrillo,
Yes.
Councilmember Ward,
Aye.
Councilmember Bray.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Okay, we move forward then to item D, and I'm going to turn this over. This is a presentation only, and then some council discussion. I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Gleason and Mr. Rathman.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, and for the Bloomington community. This is an exciting night, not at the point of adoption yet. This is truly presenting the proposed FY22 budget, fiscal year May 1st of 21 through April 30th of 22. The next meeting is Committee of the Whole on the 15th. Nothing will occur related to FY22 at that meeting. And then there will be a public hearing on March 22nd, that council meeting. And then the first council meeting in April, that is scheduled to be the night that we adopt FY22. Have received a fair amount of, I guess, praise, positive comments from those in the community about this process that started a couple of months ago. It included the creation of a video library that we're calling Budget 101. That will be an ongoing document that can be updated as needed, but it's a good document for, and has these different sections or chapters, 4 or 5 different sections. The budget presentations that Scott and Chris Tomerlin, our budget manager, throughout the course of the last 2.5 months have created. Those are posted on the website as well. We try to message this as much as we possibly can in media interviews, making ourselves available, and very excited about the work that's been done. Proud of staff, proud of this community that has put us in a position that while the operating budget holds very similar to what it's been in the past couple of fiscal years, the one thing that we're doing, and it's the council's vision, is increasing our infrastructure. And I know that we say it, and we say it this way. It's not the sexiest thing in the world to talk about when you're talking about municipal government or the organization, but it's something that truly is the backbone of our community and what we can provide in terms of business expansion, and then also those new opportunities and the trailing opportunities for existing businesses here in the community. So without anything further from me, Scott, I think you've got a presentation, and then there's 15 or 20 minutes for council. Thank you.
Thank you, Senior Manager Gleason. I learned my lesson with the last one. I'm going to have Phil help me out here with this. Stick to my expertise. So this is an official component of our budget cycle, proposed budget. We are dictated by code to present this to the community and council by March 15th. Of course, it can be amended before the adoption on April 12th. Some info tonight is going to be a repeat. I believe in consistency with the community, but we'll go through some of those screens relatively quickly, and then focus on some other angles of the components of our financial structure to hopefully give some more transparency into the budget. The theme for this year's budget is really almost one of status quo, but I almost hate to say it or put it in a context of that, because we do have this emphasis on infrastructure, nearly $60 million in infrastructure that kind of shines a light on what the city is trying to provide to the community, and finding a way in these times of COVID to bring the services forth that are needed in the community. So next screen, please, Phil. So it is a city record, the $250 million. But I want to highlight that this is not an indication of an expansion or a growth in government. The the $20 million increase over 2021 is all related to capital improvements or capital projects. Under other highlights, you can see our capital projects total nearly $60 million. Without that, we'd be below $200 million in the citywide budget. So year over year, we'd actually be down. We are down in the general fund. The general fund, again, is the largest fund of our corporate or our city structure, financial structure. That's the fund that we provide our general services out of, such as public safety and parks and rec. It's really funded primarily with tax revenues and service fees. You can see that we have a slight decrease of $1.2 million there. And some of that's related to, I guess most of it's related to what we're seeing as, a residual impact from COVID. We still think it's prudent to go into next year, taking that into account. Next slide, please. The major tax revenues settle into the general fund. As I just indicated, we think it is prudent to go into next year, considering a residual impact from COVID-19. However, these reductions are not impacting the services that we're being able to provide. You can see a $3.6 million decrease in our major tax revenues from the 21 budget, which we had taken up significantly from 20. So it isn't impacting our operations that significantly. But I will comment that we will have some lingering concerns until we get some more visibility on those local motor fuel tax revenues and potentially even hotel motel revenues. Local motor fuel tax, the remote workforce, whether or not that remains a thing of the future, and then travel as that begins to bounce back. We do know and we understand that we're turning a corner with the rollout of the vaccines, but again, we think it's prudent to go into next year, considering that there still will be a residual impact. Next slide, please. The general fund. Again, the general fund is where we produce the services, the general services of the city, such as public safety, parks and rec. All the administrative departments are in the general fund. For revenues, you can see that we are filling our budget with a use of fund balance, restricted reserves of $2.8 million. This is for the pension, public safety pensions. We're having to dip into the utility tax reserves at a $2.8 million rate for this year. Pension reserves have gone up $2 million related to some negotiated benefits from the state consolidation and some mortality rate table changes. You can see the tax line down $3.8 million over the prior year. That coincides with the previous exhibit, not a dollar for dollar, as some of those tax revenues are not highlighted in that previous exhibit. Almost $2 million decrease in total revenue year over year for the general fund. Next slide, please. General fund expenses. You can see that we've done, I think, a good job of trying to maintain our expense structure in the general fund. A 0.8% increase for salaries. It's 1.3% net of a vacancy offset. A vacancy offset is related to timing issues we have with filling staff positions, primarily in public safety. We have a large vacancy savings we're realizing every year. So given the history of that, we've began to incorporate that into our budget over the last couple of years. Capital expenditures, we've added $600,000 for cash for equipment instead of allocating that to the capital lease to try to maintain our trajectory towards weaning ourselves off the capital equipment lease, the borrowing for equipment. We found those dollars by decreasing ambulance insurance write-offs in the other expenditure line due to a federal program we're involved in. We're realizing more revenues with our ambulance services. Next slide, please. This is a new exhibit for the evening. This highlights our general fund by functional area so that the community can see in the general fund of the $109 million, what are the primary components of that. So I'll just run down this list quickly and walk through the comparisons over prior year. The administrative department, that's not a department, it's administrative category, includes administration, city manager, legal, finance, HR, the clerk's office. We have a $649,000 increase over the prior year. Some of that's related to increased expenditures in IT. Some of it's related to increased expenditures and utility billing related to card fees and the invoice cloud. Those do get passed on, are allocated to the enterprise funds. So some of that is kind of a wash for the general fund. Public safety, this is our fire and police departments, including the communication center for police, a $2.1 million increase. Most of that is related to the pension increase that I just referred to. I'll skip down a couple to public works. We actually have a decrease in that category of over $700,000. These are all related to commodity decreases projected from our managers in the public works department. Asphalt and concrete, $839,000 decrease in the transfer. Okay, so the transfer is related to the major tax revenues depositing into the general fund. So home rule sales tax, our local motor fuel tax. The asphalt and concrete gets 100% of the local motor fuel tax. It gets 10% of the home rule sales tax. So since we're budgeting decreases in those revenue categories for next year, there's a decrease in the transfer to that fund. Now we are keeping the expenditures in that fund at the 7.2 million that Kevin Cothe just referred to. We have some fund balance in that fund. We try to maintain fund balance in that fund as our expenditures usually occur early in the year and the revenue comes in later. But we are going to allocate or budget the full expenditures going in. We think that is what's needed for the community to maintain our road infrastructure. A capital improvement fund transfer, we're not doing any transfer this year. We do have fund balance in that capital improvement fund. So that helped us out tremendously for the general fund that we did not have to transfer dollars into the capital improvement fund, and still we're going to be able to address capital projects within that fund. Off to the right is another perspective I wanted to provide on the general fund. So when we present our budget, we're presenting gross revenues and gross expenditures. We rarely show the net per department. So I wanted to highlight that some of the general fund departments actually kind of provide revenues related to their fees and kind of help pay for themselves. So for public safety, you can see the gross expenditures budgeted for the year 58.6 million, but the net is 52.1. The revenues coming into the public safety category are primarily ambulance fees of over $5 million. And then for police department, we have towing, resource officers for the schools. It's about $200,000 each. Just to highlight a couple other ones, economic development, it goes from 5.2 million down to 3.6 million. This is primarily related to construction permits. And then Parks and Rec, the $11.7 million in total expenditures for the year, but you can see that net of revenues, it's really 6.6 million. That's a $5.2 million revenue resource for that category. You can see the departments that bring in significant revenues: ICE, the zoo, the programs themselves, aquatics, BCPA, the hockey, the Bloomington ICE. That's one of the departments that actually, in some years, pays for itself. They do very well there. Next slide, please. This is the general fund total expenditures or total budget by functional area. You can see public safety at 58.6 is a larger component of the general fund. Next slide, please. Citywide budget. Same exhibit that we've used in the last couple of presentations, highlighting the use of fund balance is the use of our reserves, accumulated reserves, a change of $16 million. You can see in the notes that 13.5 is related to motor fuel tax projects. 11.7 million of the full $34.6 million is related to water projects. And then skipping halfway down, miscellaneous revenue, you can see a significant increase in the budget, but that's primarily due to our placeholder for borrowing for O'Neill Pool. I mentioned before that we use cash accounting when it comes to our budget process. Even if we're borrowing for needs, we show that as revenue as opposed to a liability, and the same for expenditures on fixed assets and things of that nature that would normally hit on the balance sheet. Those hit expenses so that we can visibly see the dollars coming in and dollars going out. Next slide, please. Citywide expenses, I want to highlight salaries as I've done in the past. It actually shows a decrease. This is related to bringing the management of the arena, the entertainment side of the arena in-house to the Parks and Rec Department. So $900,000 of salary expense that was in the venue works, but it was still part of the city budget, was removed. We added 4 contractual employees in the contractuals line, but even with that, you can see there's only just a modest increase on that line of 106,000. Capital expenditures, fairly large increase year over year, 21.4 million. All of our capital projects we've been discussing. Jumping down to the bottom, you can see the year over year total expenditures have gone up by 20 million. So in effect, that capital expenditure line is really what's driving the increase year over year. And without that, we'd be at a lower budget in 22 as compared to 21. Next slide, please. This is another new exhibit for the evening, highlighting the citywide budget by fund. So as with the general fund, we described it by department. Most other funds within the city are not structured in a departmental breakdown other than the water fund. So when we look at the citywide budget, we organize it by fund. So you can see the general fund is 109 million. That's 43.5% of the total citywide budget, down almost $2 million we've discussed. And then you can see the individual fund increases down the list. These are the major funds, and we have a miscellaneous all other funds category at the bottom. And almost in every instance, the increase year over year is related to an increase in capital projects. Solid waste had a $399,000 increase related to some of their disposal fees, recycling fees. Those actually jumped on us a year or so ago, but those are increasing this year. Their leases, it's an equipment heavy need in the solid waste, so their lease expenditures are going up as well. And then I also wanted to comment on the Grocer Motors Arena, the arena has an increase of 120,000. Now, that's 2 divisions in that fund. Basically the building / maintenance side and the entertainment side. The entertainment side is actually realizing a $245,000 net decrease related to bringing the management in-house to parks. That's what we're projecting for 2022. So that increase is related to the maintenance of the building. It's an aging structure, and the maintenance costs are getting higher and higher. And then the final fund that we'll highlight is actually several funds, our internal service funds, our insurance funds. This is the way we account for our insurance activity. It's paid out in individual funds. This kind of grosses up our budget because we charge the other funds for the health insurance premiums, the water fund, the sewer fund for the employees. That's basically ends up being a revenue in the internal service fund. And then those expenditures or those payments are made to the insurance providers out of those internal service funds. And you can see we've got a pretty material increase of about 1.2 million, primarily related to increases in health insurance costs. Next slide, please. As with the general fund, this is just a visual representation of our split for the citywide by fund. You can see the general fund is 109 million, 44% of the total citywide budget. Next slide, please. During the previous presentation, we had the directors come up and speak to the individual projects within all the separate funds. So this is just a summary. You can see the FY22, we have the $59.9 million in total capital expenditures. And then you can see the difference, the increases per fund there. The capital improvement, the very first fund, that includes the $10.3 million placeholder for O'Neill Pool. Next slide, please. I just wanted to highlight the information that's available related to the individual projects. I'm not going to speak to these projects, but I wanted to give the community an indication as to what information we provide and the level of detail that our directors go into when planning these projects. This information is in the second book of the budget volumes, which is posted online now. There are pictures, graphical representations of the projects. There's write-up. If it's a multi-year project, it shows the expenditures that are expected over the next couple of years or few years, depending on how long the project's going to last. This is the capital improvement fund, the Constitution Trail extension, a little over $100,000 for this project. Next slide, please. The state motor fuel tax, the largest project, the Hamilton Road, Bunn Street to Morrissey Drive, a little over $11 million for this project. Next slide, please. Water fund capital projects, and there's an exhibit, or there's details like this on every project if you're curious to see the need and the extent of the project itself. The Fort Jesse ground storage tanks 1 and 2, I just have a picture of one here. It's a $6.2 million project. Next slide, please. Sewer capital projects, the Gray Avenue sanitary sewer, a little over or $200,000 project. Next slide, please. And the arena, this is the rooftop units. These are the HVAC units on top of the arena. They're very large. I think they're like about the size of the trailer on the back of a semi. This is just highlighting the deterioration that's occurring there and the kind of documentation that is done when a budget request is put in. The next slide, please. I won't go through all these, but I'm trying, I'd like to kind of bring to life, the budget, what the budget dollars mean to the community, and where some of the touch points to the community related to all these dollars, these large buckets that we talk about so easily sometimes. Well, you can see this is of the last 12-month data that we have for these categories. A lot of this information is available in our annual audit in the statistical section, but the police, they service over 56,000 calls in 1 year. Fire over 11,000. You can see that parks, with that budget, the numbers of attendees they've had related to their different programs. They maintain 38 parks, 5 lakes, 30 miles of trail, 3 golf courses, a zoo, skate park, cultural arts venue. The library has had 277,000 visits. Next slide, please. Just to highlight a couple more, the trash and recycling hall, 24,000 tons, 48.4 million pounds of trash and recycling. That's quite an undertaking, but that's what the actual budget dollars are doing for the community. As the sewer and water system, 1,100 miles are maintained. And administration, the previous presentation I did this evening talked about 30,000 utility billing accounts. Well, we're producing 360,000 utility bills and the related payments. So again, these are some of just the budget and what it means to the community and how everyone's lives are kind of being impacted by these larger dollars, and just trying to bring a little life to that. So next slide, please. So next steps. I mentioned that the books are online as we speak at cityblm.org/budget. There's 2 books. I've given some indication here. We've given some indication. If you want to just get a real high-level sense of the budget, some good sections to look at is the budget overview section in book 1, year-over-year summary of revenues and expenditures. Book 2, the capital improvement section. What's going to be going on in the city to ensure that our infrastructure stays intact. There's all that information I was just going over, the detail on all the projects, a list of the projects. And then both the books include department and fund narratives. So what are the challenges for each department? What are they looking to accomplish in the coming year? So some of that background information is what's going to be occurring. And then, as the city manager mentioned, additional resources. We have the Budget 101 series, a video series, our annual, believe it or not, our audit, our comprehensive annual financial report. The back section, the statistical section, has a lot of great information in it about our debt and things of that nature. And all these can be found on our website. So want to highlight there's information out there. Just, try to take it a bite at a time. It can be overwhelming by the volume, but, look at the table of contents and look for stuff that might interest you. And hopefully it'll be helpful in understanding the financial structure of the city. As the city manager mentioned, we have a proposed budget public hearing March 22nd, and then the final adoption on the 12th. So that concludes the presentation. I'll pause now for comments or questions.
Mayor, you're on mute.
Somebody must have muted me. Maybe it was me, but Anyway, thank you. I don't see anybody. Madam Clerk. Oh, whoa, whoa. I now see 3 of them. It's lighting up like a Christmas tree. I'm going to call them in order that I see them. Councilmember Bray, Bolin, and Carrillo. Kim.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you so much for this presentation, Scott. It's very thorough. And, you know, as you mentioned, these slides are not new to us in large part. Appreciate the work that you've done and the presentations and the information you've given us all along the way, because it is a lot to absorb. And so I appreciate the thoroughness in which you've done that, and you've given us opportunities for all kinds of interaction and discussion over these last several months. My question is, so as I go to explain this to my constituents and we explain it to the rest of the community, we see that we have a $20 million increase in the budget year over year. And so as I took my notes over the months that we've talked about this and we've consensed about where our priorities lie, there were 3 things that I'm going to say back to my constituents, but I want you to correct me if I'm wrong. So the 3 things that I think I'm going to say are your $20 million, your increase, are going to an increase in taking care of water, taking care of our roads, and then replacing a vital piece of recreation and life quality over in O'Neill Pool. Would those be the 3? Do my numbers come together right when I say that's the 20? Or is that too simplistic?
No, I think you've captured it. I mean, our roads expenditures, if you include like the motor fuel tax as part of the roads, I mean, because that is kind of road related. Yeah. Our asphalt and concrete are steady, but we've increased significantly the state motor fuel tax. So water and pool, spot on. Roads, yes, I agree, but I just wanted to throw in the little caveat there.
So thank you for that. That's all I had. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you so much. Councilmember Bolin.
Yeah, I'd like to thank Scott for all the work, the hours, and the staff that does all the preparation prior to dumping it on Scott to figure out how to put it together. And I do like the way it is presented, not only to the council, but to the community. I think it's very important, the transparency that you've put forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that, Councilmember Bolin. You are spot on, as usual, because great minds think alike. Councilmember Carrillo.
Thank
Jen,
you.
can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Great.
Jen, go ahead.
So, Scott, just a quick question to make sure that I'm not getting my math wrong here. So, I know that I had shared some questions around the police budget. If approved, this proposed budget would result in over $30 million spent on police in fiscal year 22. Is that correct?
Yes, that includes basically the police force, the communication center, and the pensions.
But does not include drug fund money that's available or any of the contributions towards police pensions. Is that accurate?
No, that number does include the pension number.
Oh, got it. Okay. And what percentage of the overall budget is that?
For the PD?
Yes.
For the 30 million?
Yes.
I'm going to do 30 million out of the citywide. That's 12%.
Okay, gotcha. So I guess I have a question, something I want to raise to fellow council members, and then an ask for the city manager. I was reflecting on this, and it's a little hard to believe because it feels like we've lived in a time warp forever. But it has been less than a year since George Floyd was killed by the Minneapolis police. And, I think a lot of folks want to say that that was an isolated incident that doesn't have anything to do with us. Nonetheless, cities across the United States started looking at their police budgets as a response to this. And, I heard many folks around the dais at the time, say Black Lives Matter, say that they, expressed disapproval of what had happened to Mr. Floyd. And I think this is an opportunity for us to have part 2 of that conversation. So just prior to moving forward with the budget, I'd like to ask that we as a council have a conversation about what this increase in the police budget means, what role we play in perpetuating or disrupting institutional racism, and what role we see ourselves playing in the police reform movement overall that has picked up traction in the last number of years. So I just don't want us to sign off on another increase to the police budget, which I think is already, makes up a pretty sizable amount of our overall budget, without first having a serious conversation that's anchored around the budget. I think we owe it to our constituents, all of our constituents, but especially to our Black constituents and our constituents of color. And so, I also, as I was listening to Kevin in the previous piece, I was thinking about how much time we've spent and the level of detail that we have gotten in terms of breakdown of budgets and different projects that we're looking at. And it's occurred to me that we just have never heard a similar presentation from the police department. So I know that I'm hungry for that information, and a number of people are as well, because it just doesn't feel fair to have a I have a lot of questions that I'd like to ask about it, particularly as I now have the numbers in front of me, but it doesn't feel like a fair conversation to have without Interim Chief Scott on the line to be able to speak on behalf of his department. So yeah, open to how we want to handle it, but I wonder if with our meeting schedule, if that's a possibility. And I guess that's a question for the city manager.
Well, thank you, Jen. I appreciate that. Just to interject, and I'm happy to defer to the city manager if he wants to add, but we have obviously had lots of very tense situations, not just within our community, within our culture, that we had the George Floyd incident, last summer. It was no decent human being, regardless of their race, their creed, their religion, Muslim, Christian, Jewish, Hindu, whatever that might be, that was horrible. And that's something that we have to work forward. We must, move forward with and look forward on, and to do what we can in our community. But at this point, we have a couple of council members who want to speak. As I see them, it's Councilmember Boland and then Councilmember Matthey. Donna, can you hear me?
I can hear you. I'm unmuted. I believe that there was a question asked of City Manager Gleason, so I'd let him answer that, and then I will speak.
Please, go ahead. No, I'm sorry, Donna, you go ahead first. We're going to start with the council. Oh, okay.
Well, I would like to hear what City Manager
Before
Gleason.
you say anything, you wanted to hear what Tim had to say.
Yes, yes.
I'm sorry, Donna. Thank you. Tim, did you have a response? Thank you.
Yeah, it really becomes the wish of the council. We have 20 minutes allotted for discussion about the entire FY22 budget that's been proposed. If at this point in the budget process, we want to take a deeper dive into the material that has been presented, that's entirely the wish of the council. I do have some comments. I know I did not ask Interim Police Chief Greg Scott to join, but I think I can handle any questions related to the police budget or other departments for that matter.
Yeah, I guess it's just a question of whether we can actually, I think you had said that during the committee of the whole, we weren't planning on looking at anything budget related. I don't know whether we can carve out some space to have the conversation there so folks can be more prepared and so the chief can be there. If this is going to be our only opportunity, then I'm happy to ask my questions, but I just wanted to put that out as an option.
Jen, let me just suggest this is not the only opportunity for you or other members of the council to ask questions about the budget or the process before, during, or after it's developed. I think we're kind of about 10 months into the process. So whatever you want to ask is still quite appropriate. At this point, I see Councilmember Matthey. Go ahead.
Oh.
Jamie, can you hear me?
Donna was first.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Jamie.
I'm technologically impaired. I'm sorry. Oh, I didn't realize. Oh, Donna, did I cut you off before you were done?
Well,
I grovel at your feet, my dear. Okay, sorry.
No,
Donna,
yeah.
Donna, go ahead. You have the floor. I apologize deeply. I'm sorry. Okay.
Anyway, I don't know where to start here. The process for the doing the budget, as I understand it, begins in August, maybe, where the departments start evaluating all their needs and such. And as Alderwoman Carrillo said, the incident with George Floyd happened in August, and it would seem to me that it would have been appropriate to maybe bring forward this kind of discussion so there could be time for the council and the department, the police department, to discuss this kind of, to discuss the topic. If the budget is due to be passed by April 30th, I don't see a whole lot of time to make major adjustments. We've had ample opportunity for input. It's been presented to us multiple times, both in private and the 3-on-1s and in public at these meetings. And to me, this is a last minute change. And I think we need more discussion, possibly after this budget cycle. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Councilmember Matthey.
I think my comments echoed Donna's quite a bit, that what's being talked about from is more policy change on how we move forward with policing in the community and what that looks like. That's more substantive conversation than just talking about the budget. I don't know that we have enough time to get through and process through completely changing policy in that nature when, we're this close to the end of the budget. I think that's something that could have been brought forward a long time ago, or even started when we started having these budget presentations in January. We could have had a lot more time. Now we're down to the end of the wire. I'm happy to have those conversations. I'm going to be on the council for next year, and at least next year as well. So I'm perfectly happy to have these conversations. I encourage us to talk about those. It just seems that this is a more substantive conversation than we're going to cram in one meeting next week for committee of the whole in order to change how we structure the police budget. That's all I have, Mayor.
Okay, thank you so much. Councilmember Bray, Mboka, and Guerrillo. Kim?
Thank you, Mayor. I've already spoken once. I don't know if you want to call on Mboka first.
Just go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh.
We've actually already exhausted our time. So
okay.
I'm going to go just quickly. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Just quickly, I just wanted to say that I attended virtually a community discussion that was hosted by PSCRB, and correct me if I'm misstating that, city manager, please, if you know. We had a community conversation among multiple stakeholder groups, including our interim chief, Scott. And, that was very much, tailored to our experience in Bloomington, how our police are delivering those services, and how the companion resource groups are weaving together their response to calls and the like. And it was my understanding coming out of that panel that there was no call for any such reduction of police resources because those resources were considered valuable. And in fact, let's face it, we have some directives coming out of Springfield telling us that we've got to spend more money on police and equipment to enhance the transparency and make sure that they're doing, have the resources they need to do the job that we want them to do. So just this idea of just cutting police due to some political agenda just really isn't a match for what Bloomington is experiencing. I think that that's just a fair statement of how our community worked the issue up to date. Don't think that that's a dispositive working of any issue. Things are dynamic, but to think that today that we think we need to have more conversation, I'm not seeing it this time. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Councilmember Milawamble, thank you.
Yes, thank you. I guess I'm going to agree with some of what's been said already. Is that I feel like this is it happens at a time that's a little bit too late. We only have about a month and a half, and to me, some of the police functions, which are it's public safety. And it is something that I take very seriously. And I do think if you're going to have these kinds of conversations, you need to fully understand what the ramifications of what would be proposed in terms of changes and how it impacts people in the community. You heard Scott Rathbun in his great presentation talk about the fact that the police handles 55,000 calls. So what would happen if we were to make some changes at this particular time? What would happen to those calls? Where do those go? Who handles those? I do think we do need to it's not something that we can have a discussion about in a month and a half. I just don't think that is the right way to go about things. And I would say, yes, what happened to George Floyd was terrible, was unfortunate, but we have to be sure that if we're talking about something, we're talking about what happens in Bloomington, and we cannot conflate what happened other places with what is happening in Bloomington. So for that reason, to me, I don't think this would be the right time to have this conversation.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Ward and then Emig.
You had said I was next.
I'm sorry?
You had said I was next.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. Councilmember Carrillo, then Ward and Emig. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, back to this question about what's happening locally, I think that we have, we've had multiple reports come out in the last number of years about use of force, about different outcomes for different people of different races in terms of our policing and the way that they receive it. And so that's local. And to continue to put money into that without questioning it is us essentially continuing to co-sign on that. And I mean, this is not an issue that I own. Anybody could have had this conversation. Anybody could have brought this up at any point since George Floyd, before that. So I don't understand why it's like, oh, well, Jen, why are you bringing this up now? Like every single one of us has a responsibility to be accountable for what is happening in our city. And any person that was paying attention this past year should have been grappling with what are we going to do moving forward in terms of how we fund the police and how police operate in our community. So, I mean, the onus is not on me, and I'm proposing that we actually have a conversation about it. People are going to vote on the budget. We're going to vote on the budget regardless. But there is no reason that we shouldn't have a detailed look about what is being proposed. I guess I'll also say that this is the first day that we actually have an official budget proposed that we can comment on. So that's what I'll say.
Thank you, Councilmember Carrillo. Just to clarify, of course, I don't think anyone would disagree with anything that you've just said. Of course, we need to be involved in this. The only thing is that this is not the first budget discussion. We have a budget discussion, you know, I don't mean to, and I don't understand what you're saying in terms of formality, but we have a budget discussion all year at every council meeting. So those are the times that we should begin to discuss these situations, so that if we're talking about even something like a, whatever the percent would be, 1%, 5%, 8%, 10% cut, so that it's not across the board, because that can't be, because we can't cut our salaries, we can't cut our pension obligations, we can't cut lots of things. And so this is the kind of thing we should really have been talking about a year or more ago, last summer, after George Floyd, whatever. But, and it doesn't mean we can't have it now, of course. Please don't misunderstand me. It just, it's harder to have it now, because I could not, as a mayor, I'm telling you, I would have to veto any change in the budget that was not clear, precise, and surgical. We're about ready to wrap this up. This is at the end of the process, not at the beginning or even the middle of the process. So thank you. For whatever that's worth, let me turn to Councilmember Ward, and then Councilmember Painter, and Councilmember Emig. Thank you very much. Molly.
Yeah, so thanks, but I actually would defer to Councilmember Emig, because I think she's been waiting the longest, and then I think I was next. And
yeah. Oh my gosh, are you a pastor, a member of the clergy or something? I mean, who defers like that to other people? I'm sorry, I'm obviously being obnoxious, as I usually am. Molly, thank you. Councilmember Emig. Julie?
Thank you, Mayor. I unmuted successfully. So I think that there are two questions on the table, and they're getting conflated. One is the discussion even needed, right? Is it worth having this conversation about our priorities and the relationship between the police department and the community, and how that does influence budgeting and policy? And then the second question is whether or not we would make a change on this year's budget. And I would like to keep those separate, because I do think it's worth having the conversation. And I do hold myself accountable as is important in terms of thinking through what I can do to be a better servant for this community. So I would propose that we think about how this can become an initiative or a way of examining the nature of the needs in this community, how they're being addressed, what are the multiple ways of funding. I mean, it almost sounds like it could be a task force or a commission or some anointed body from this council to create some data-based concrete proposals going into next year, next fiscal cycle, so that we can make adjustments based on what we determine to be valuable and important. And again, that's based in data.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Painter, and then Ward.
Now I'm going to claim my time now. This is Molly. So having deferred, I will not only echo what Councilmember Emig said, but I want to kind of flip it just from a different perspective and say that rather than looking at it from the perspective of deferring, I'd like to see that we have this conversation as soon as possible. I agree with the idea that there are two different questions on the table in terms of having the conversation and whether or not we choose to make a change in this year's budget. But, just as there's not any kind of a good time for some conversations, people put off having certain conversations because it's not a comfortable time, or there's not time to have the conversation. I think that the conversations need to happen. There's never going to be a good time for the conversation. There's never going to be a time when we're not busy, when there's not a lot of stuff on the agenda, when there's not a budget to deal with. So let's commit as a council to having the conversation at the soonest possible time and to having it right. That's not to say that we have to rush into anything, but the time is now to have the conversation while we're talking about it. So I would like to see us commit to at our earliest convenience. And I'm requesting this, maybe this isn't the smoothest way, but I am requesting, city manager, that we put this on a very soon agenda to talk about. And whether we as the council choose to make a decision in time for this budget cycle, that's another question and can be raised and discussed, but having the conversation about what we need to do in a comprehensive way, I think can't just wait until, well, when we have the time. We need to commit to having that conversation and getting the conversation started. And to commit to doing it in a comprehensive way, unless we just want a Band-Aid or something that really is meaningless. So I want both of those things. I want a meaningful conversation, and I don't want to kick the can down the road. So let's commit to having it.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Ward. I very much appreciate that. And I think not just myself, I haven't talked to every council member in the last 11 milliseconds, but I can tell you, I can't imagine that what you've just suggested is not our charge moving forward. That's absolutely incredible. Thank you so much, Molly. I appreciate that. And let's move forward with all of that. At this point, and if we need to move in a way that we're not moving as rapidly as we should be, please, anyone, Molly or others, nudge me, nag me, kick me in the chest. Let me be sure that we move forward. Councilmember Painter, and then Councilmember Bolin. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I think this is definitely something that we need to talk about and have a comprehensive conversation as soon as we possibly can. I think that it's too late to put it in the budget, but I do think that we need to discuss this. I know in my ward, in the last couple of years, there have been 6 murders and 1 just over the weekend. And I can tell you that Black and brown people in my ward want increased police protection. They don't want it to go away. They don't want to defund the police. However, they do want to be treated respectfully when they do encounter the police. And brace yourself for another wacky analogy from Johnny, but if you can't play the piano very well, you wouldn't cut off your fingers. You would invest in lessons and you would practice so you could do better. And I think that's the sort of thing that we need to do with our police. And I'm anxious to talk about this in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilmember Painter. Last but not least, of course, Donna. Donna, you need to unmute yourself.
Yeah, there's
we hear you. Thank you, Donna. Sorry.
There's a couple things. Instead of looking at the police first, I think we're putting the cart before the horse. I think that we would need to have something in place, from my understanding of all the discussions that have gone on and the demands being made over the summer, to take some of the non-police activity off the shoulders of the police. So we would definitely need to have some kind of mental health, social work system in place before we take that off and defund the police. And I've had several conversations, one with Chief Donath and several with Interim Chief Scott, regarding this particular issue. And the most recent question I asked him other than, what it would look like with the defunding. Let me pull up his answer here. I asked him about staffing, and his answer was about a staffing model. And the number that is usually used is 2.5 per thousand. And according to our census, we have a population of 78,000 people, which would mean that we would need to have 195 officers. Currently, we have less than our allotted number, which is 128. So we are basically short-staffed at this point. The reason that we're evaluated with a lower number of police than would be required by this model is because of our location in central Illinois, the size of our city in relation to the closest city, and the fact that we do have relatively low crime. But that doesn't mean we need less officers right now. It means that we have the right amount of officers right now because of that, if that makes sense. Technically, we should have 195 according to staffing models, but we have less than 128. So who are you going to cut? How many more are you going to cut? That's just my thought. Thank you.
Thank you very much. At this point, Councilmember Carrillo.
Yeah, that was a lot of mental gymnastics happening there, but I guess I will just wrap us back up to say, is this a conversation that we are able to have? So the questions, some of the examples of the questions I have is, we have a line item that's special police services. What's that about? And why is there, I think we budgeted $120,000. The actual spend has been $9,390. We have a category that's like other supplies that has $250,000. We had school resource officers fees go up, even though school has not been in session. So anyway, I just have a number of questions like that. So I'd like to know where those questions need to be directed, whether we're going to be able to have this conversation at the committee of the whole meeting, or whether, that's my question.
Thanks. I think we can have this conversation at any point, but I'm going to turn to Councilmember Bray, and then I will refer back to the city manager, Jen, before we finish this situation and conversation. Councilmember Bray, thank you. Excuse me.
Thank you, Mayor. And I want to make mention of the fact that there's a lot of homework that goes into this job of being a city council member. Part of that homework is really knowing not just maybe what lofty goals may be or what political agendas may be with our own individual politics. We're called to service of the city of Bloomington, and we're called to put on a governance hat, a nonpartisan governance hat.
Point of order.
And so we're in a situation right now where we're here.
I'm sorry, Kim. I just need, what's the point of order, Councilmember Carrillo?
How is this relevant to getting a lecture about how I could be a better city council member? I don't know.
No, okay, fair enough. Councilmember Bray, go ahead. Thanks.
Thank you for the question. I didn't mention your name whatsoever. So if the shoe fits, wear it.
Okay, point of order.
Whoa. Okay. Jen, stop. Whoa, no, we're not going that path. I'm sorry. Kim, can you clarify a bit more precisely?
Yes, exactly. So the point is that this idea of discussions is something that we all carry as our homework and the work we should do. We should be talking to one another individually, and I know I do that. And we should be having phone calls with one another individually. Discussions and the work that we do is all preparation to come to these business meetings. And I reject the notion that folks can only talk about these important issues when there's a media present or there's a microphone in front of their face. These are issues that we should all have on our hearts. And as mentioned, the disrespect shown here tonight to Councilmember Bolton, I take exception to that, Jen, to your comment that you made about her and about her comments. And that was not appropriate. And I'd like you to stop that kind of talk in the space.
Whoa, okay, whoa.
So at this
Whoa,
juncture-
okay, we're not, I'm sorry. We're gonna have to stop that because I'm not sure what was or what the problems were. I think we just need to, thank you, Councilmember Bray, Councilmember Carrillo. I know we're all here. We're not here for the money. We're here to try to do the best thing. And I'm sorry, I'm gonna shift gears so we don't go too far with that. Councilmember Ward, I see your hand up and we are actually way above time. So we need to stop this. Molly, you got the last word.
I just want an answer. Can we get this on an upcoming agenda? And if so, when?
Okay, good question. So noted. We will be back in touch, and let's all clarify this. Tim, you hear this? Can you thumbs up if you hear this?
You care if I make a couple of comments, Mayor?
Oh, I would be thrilled. Mr. Gleason.
Couple of things floating around out here, at least what I'm hearing, and it's not uncommon that I'll replay a council meeting to make sure I've got a level of understanding of what the majority want. To the question, I think Alderwoman Carrillo had about, can this be on the committee of the whole meeting next week? No way. There's way too much on some of the topics that we're talking about. But the specific questions about the line items that Alderwoman Carrillo has, you give me those questions and I'll respond to them. The pathway that this is taking, this is not something that I'm going to let fall on the shoulders of an interim police chief. I'll run the lead on this. If it's something that I need to do a budget video, because it falls into that category, I'll get the questions, I'll get the answers, I'll turn this thing around. What I'm also hearing from some of the council members is a larger question about policing. And that's one that's going to take time to prepare as well. That's one that we're staffed at a level that we are below staffing, like Alderwoman Boland said. And to be quite honest, I'm surprised how the men and women of the Bloomington Police Department do the job that they do at the staffing levels that they are at. Now, if we were at full capacity, at 128, which we hardly ever are, that would be one thing. We also have revenues out there. I'd want to have a full understanding of the sales tax component that's funding the Law and Justice Center and some of the other social services that we're providing to the community. Something else that I want to share, and I'm not suggesting anything is impossible. It's just too soon for me to make a comment or a presentation on funding. You know, another hat that the city allows me to wear on a part-time basis is I just completed a 2-year term as the chairman for the Illinois Law Enforcement Training and Standards Board. Very involved in the conversations of police reform with the Attorney General, Kwame Raoul, and the Chiefs Sheriff's Association, the Black Caucus for the state, representatives. So this is something that I've been very involved in. And one thing that I think everyone believes is the mandates that have been placed on us by the signing of this into a law by Governor Pritzker. It's actually going to add to the amount that we need to address or to be able to accomplish what's been mandated. Again, not impossible. It's just something that I've not fully been able to digest and be able to prepare for mid-year this budget, potentially going into next year's budget. So if Alderwoman Carrillo gets me the questions, I'll get an answer. I'll turn it into a video. As far as the larger discussion that many of you want, I do want to shape this and see what's actually being asked of me, but I'll do as quick a turnaround as I can so that we can put out a quality product. Thank you, Mayor, Council.
Thank you so much. I very much appreciate that. Anything else? Am I missing something? Madam Clerk, I don't think so.
Thank you. I think you're all good.
I'm sorry?
I said I think you're all good.
Okay, great. No, moving on, and we now have a, I'm sorry, presentation. Excuse me. I'm going to turn this over to our city manager, Tim Gleason. Go ahead.
And I'll make it quick. Appreciate the opportunity to provide some city manager updates to the mayor, the elected, and also to the community. Phil, can you roll the first slide, please? 12 months of COVID-19 remembrance. This is something that we can join at the McLean County Museum of History via Facebook. And this will be March 13th from 5 to 5:30. And it has been a year. It's been a very quick year. It's one that on this very date, a year ago, was celebrating my wife's birthday with our family at the bakery in Pickle. And, you blink and we've been through this. So it's something that I plan on logging into and enjoying, and would recommend the community take advantage of this as well. Next slide. I can't. April is First Friday, and we have Can You Find a Golden Egg, April 2nd, 2021, and that will be from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. Something else that I do need to mention, we skipped over regular agenda item E. There was nothing additional being proposed in the emergency ordinance. Then the other item that I wanted to add is another comment. It's International Women's Day, and the month of March is Women's History Month. And I guess I'd like to show my appreciation to the leadership of the alderwomen that sit on this council. I've got a city clerk that's sitting right across from me. Appreciate her leadership, and the executive staff for the city of Bloomington. So today's your day, but you get every other day as well. So I'm not going to get in the way of that. So congratulations, but wanted to recognize that as well. Something else, a couple of quick statements about the city moving to an online bidding and procurement platform. The city is in the process of moving to an electronic platform for bidding known as Procure Now. This will streamline the city's bidding process and help the city reach a broader audience. And this is one of the advancements that we've made at the city, and think that it's going to be a quality product in terms of procurement. Something else that we are doing, Just FOIA, is another product. It's a secure online portal designed to streamline FOIA requests. And for those in the community that might not be familiar with that, that is a Freedom of Information Act. Requests can be submitted anonymously or with an established login, allowing tracking by the requester. All records can now be distributed digitally, even large video files. And then staff time spent on FOIA requests is now easy to track, which will help us all have a better understanding of the impact FOIAs have on city staff. Let's see, I think I've covered everything, and I think I have. Productive meeting, very much appreciate everybody's time. We're a little bit longer than 2 hours, but we covered a lot of ground for the city, so thank you.
Mayor, you're muted. Mayor? Mayor?
Sorry about that. Can you hear me now? You can't hear me now.
Yes.
Oh, you can hear me now. Okay, thanks. I usually don't do that. I have the opposite problem, not muting myself. That would be much better, I suppose, in the long run. But anyway, thank you so much. At this point, we're going to turn this over to our city manager. If I'm looking at the agenda, Mr. Gleason. Oh, Madam Clerk, did you have?
Actually, Mayor, I just did comment to.
That's the equivalent of comment. Okay, you did. We wrapped that all. Okay. I was looking at Leslie, and I could usually tell. Okay, I didn't do something right. She didn't flip me off, but I knew something was up. Okay, so that was it. Okay, in terms of mayor's discussion, thank you so much. I have really nothing to add except thank you so much to our staff, to Leslie, as well as all of our city administration for just doing an incredible job. We've made this great transition from City Hall that was built about the time that dinosaurs roamed the earth, which is about the time I was born, as my kids will tell you. And now we are on the 4th floor, large admin is on the 4th floor of the city county building. But thank you all for this, and they did a fantastic job. Any of you who have not come up, you should do so and realize what a great job was done. At this point, I am going to turn this over once again to, oh, I'm sorry, our city manager has. Council members, any comments? If you'll raise your hand, or if you have any, okay.
No hands, Mayor.
Whoa, okay, well then, is there a motion to adjourn?
We have Councilmember Bolin, Milwambwe, and Painter.
Okay,
with
let's
their
do
hands
it
up.
that way. That's where we got it. Councilmember Bolin, second by Councilmember Milwambwe. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? You can hang on. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate all of what you do. Good evening.